Hello, I'm Stephanie Ellis, a Wrexham-based writer of dark fiction and poetry in the United Kingdom. I consider myself a new writer, which is really strange because I've just worked it out, and I've been writing and getting published for 9 to 10 years now, which just goes to show that time really does fly as you're getting older. My stories and poems have been published in a variety of magazines and anthologies. For instance, Fiends in the Furrows is one of the earlier ones, which contains my story The Way of the Mother, and that is actually a collection of folk horror. And then there's the very recent Shakespeare Unleashed, which is also very lovely and contains my poem Usurping Monster. My short stories have been gathered together in 2 collections, the earlier The Reckoning and also the more recent Devilkin. Both contain a number of published and unpublished stories, so you do actually get your money's worth with both of those, and Devilkin contains a novelette at the back, so it's quite a chunky read, but there's lots of stories to enjoy within those. My novellas, I've got Bottled, which is a gothic horror, and that's from Bridget's Press, and it focuses on the idea of the impossible bottle, those bottles you see in antique shops and seaside shops, the bottles with the ships in them and the carefully carved scenes in there, and you wonder how they did it. And then my character, he inherits a house from his grandfather, and it holds bad memories for him, but he goes back for one last visit to lay those ghosts to rest, as you do. And he discovers the impossible bottles and the curse that lies upon them and his family. And does he get out again? You'll have to read it and find out. And then there's my bio-horror Paused. And that came about after reading an article on locked-in syndrome, which is when the body shuts down but the brain is still very alert and aware of everything around you. It's a condition I think is the most terrible one to be in. What if you were stood on a beach and the tide was coming in, or crossing a railway track and a train was coming and there was no one to help you? And I turned it into an idea of a pandemic where people suffered the same condition, so everybody was literally freezing. Whether it was viral, whether there was some other reason behind it, again, you have to read it and find out. But I will say there that it was written before COVID, or at least the bulk of it was done before COVID, so it's not inspired by that. Then there's The 5 Turns of the Wheel, with its very lovely cover by Elizabeth Leggett, and that is the first in my folk horror series, my 5 Turns folk horror series, and it features an area of England known as the Weald with 6 villages there, and alongside the Weald is this invisible world of Umbra, ruled over by Lord Whale, who is the son of the Mother Nature. And they dictate the lives of those who live in the villages nearby. And in return for blood sacrifice from those villagers, the countryside is allowed to continue in prosperity. But over the years, the rituals have become very cruel. And Megan Wheelborn, one of the villagers in Cropsey, decides to bring a halt to these rituals. Does she succeed or not? You'll again read it and find out. But within that book, you'll find 3 characters of mine, Tommy, Betty and Fiddler. They will appear in other books, and they are monstrous, but they are wonderful monsters in a way. I had great fun writing about them, and they are the ones who lead the ritual. I hope you do like them, because they keep cropping up, and they will continue to keep cropping up until they get killed off, perhaps. Who knows? But they certainly don't in Reborn, which is the follow-up. So in 5 Turns, they do come a bit of a cropper, but in Reborn, they leave the Weald. They're a bit fed up. They've lost their energy, so they go to visit the mother and the horned god in an area known as the Layerings, which is ruled over by their sister, who's just known as Sister, someone they left years ago. So they're there to beg forgiveness, to get their energy back, and it tells you a bit of the backstory of the 3 of them, and especially Betty. And whilst I call him Betty, it's a name given to the role that he plays. The 3 of them are very much like a mummers troupe that would go between the villages, and they would act and sing and entertain people. And within that troupe, there would always be a man dressed as a woman for comedic effect, and they were often called Betty, and that's where this character comes from. But he certainly isn't funny in that respect, although he is very entertaining. So it's his story, and it's a story of how they regain their place in Umbra with Lord Whale and with the mother. But it's also the story of Megan, of what she does. She has to make her own peace with herself, and she follows, but on a different path to the same place. So you've got all these different journeys coming together, and who survives, who doesn't. Yes, there is sacrifice, there is ritual, but I hope you enjoy that as well. So that's the second in the series, and I'm currently writing the third, which is a Yule-based story, because I want one that you can read when it's snowing outside and you're curled up by a crackling fire with a hot drink or a hot toddy or something like that. And this is called Mother's Night, and it very much based on the idea of Mother's Night, which is an ancient pagan festival, and also the story of the Holly King and the Oak King. So that is one story that I'm writing at the moment. But my very recent release is the Woodcutter, and it's so recent that I don't actually have a print copy to wave around in front of the camera. But here is the digital version of the Woodcutter, and that is not 5 turns based. It's very much set in the present day. It's about 2 characters, unrelated, who return to a particular village, Little Hatchet, which lives in the shadow of God-Begone Woods, where the legendary Woodcutter and Grandma are supposed to live. And you'll find me reading a chapter of this somewhere on the site, I hope, over the next day or 2. So those are all my books. Thank you for listening. I hope you pick them up and read them. If you enjoy them, let me know. If not, let me know. I don't mind, as long as I know that people are reading. And if you're reading, why not write? It's never too late to pick up a pen. Thank you.